Reading with your kids.
Hola, ni hao, konnichiwa, assalamu alaikum, shalom, mahaba, ciao, bonjour, namaste, jumbo. Bienvenidos! Welcome to Reading with Your Kids, coming to you from the legendary neighborhood of Reedville, located in beautiful Boston, Massachusetts. On Reading with Your Kids, we celebrate the magic of books, the joy of family reading, and the authors who inspire us all. Our mission is to help families grow closer through reading. To help us in our mission, please be sure to tell all of your family and friends about the show. Tell your kids' teachers, librarians, principals, lunch ladies, and let them know that they can hear us on the WREB AM/FM 24/7 radio network. And they can find us on the iHeartRadio app, on Spotify, Good Pods, Amazon Music, Apple Podcasts, CastBox, Player FM, Audible. Wherever you find your favorite shows, you can find Reading with Your Kids. Two wonderful guests for you today. First up, Arian Hefty is here to celebrate A Seal Upon Your Heart, his debut middle grade novel. And later in the show, Dr. Letishia Jefferson will be here to celebrate Zoe's Day with Dr. J. Hey, my friends, I have a super idea you are going to love. How about this weekend, turn your backyard cookout into a storybook celebration? Fire up the grill, crack open a few of your favorite picture books, and serve up Big Fork Brand's legendary bacon sausage. Made with nitrate-free bacon and premium pork, it's juicy, smoky, and unforgettable. Top it off with Big Fork's spicy Chicago fire sauce, and you've got a meal as bold as the characters in your favorite bedtime tale. Get 20% off your order using the promo code READ at bigforkbrands.com. That's bigforkbrands.com. Promo code READ to get 20% off, because nothing brings families together like great food, great books, and a whole lot of flavor. Big Fork Brands. Read, grill, repeat. Join us right now from the great Garden State of New Jersey. Our guest is here today to celebrate his debut middle grade novel. It's called A Seal Upon the Heart. Please welcome to the show, Arian Hefty. Arian, how are you?
I'm fine, Jed. Thank you so much for having me.
Delighted to have you on. A Seal Upon the Heart. Interesting, intriguing title.
Yeah, I can tell you a little bit more about where that title comes from. Maybe briefly, I'll just tell you a little bit about a very high-level sort of summary of the book, and describe a little bit about how I ended up arriving to writing it. So first up, I'll just kind of cut to the chase. A Seal Upon the Heart is in the epigraph of my novel. It's a quote from the Song of Solomon in the Old Testament, but taken more directly actually from Viktor Frankl in his Man's Search for Meaning. Viktor Frankl was a psychiatrist who survived. He was an Austrian psychiatrist who survived the Holocaust, and wrote a really influential book called Man's Search for Meaning that really, I think, bent the arc of my life quite a bit. And so that's ultimately where the title came from. But basically, and I'm sure we're going to unpack this quite a bit, but basically, in 2021, I had a cancer diagnosis myself at 37 years old. And going through that as a physician myself, having taken care of a lot of patients who were kind of like me at one point in their lives, having just had this sort of earth-shaking diagnosis. I was thinking a lot about, how do you find meaning when you don't have control in your life and you're going through difficult circumstances? And I thought a lot about a passage from Man's Search for Meaning, where Viktor Frankl, he's in the concentration camp and he's thinking about his wife. Of course, the men and the women were separated. And he was thinking about his wife at the time, and he was reflecting on the fact that he had no idea whether she was alive or dead. And at that moment, he realized it didn't matter to him, that because he knew her once, and that because they loved each other, that their love could transcend space and time, that it was eternal in that sense. And that particular passage, but, largely the whole book, really spoke to me. And I continued to revisit it during my own cancer journey. I had 2 young kids, and I decided that I would write a novel that was ultimately about that message, that no matter where we are in sort of the physical universe, time and space, that we can sort of always carry and hold close our love. It's set as a seal upon our hearts. Mm-hmm. And that's ultimately where the title comes from.
Wow. I'm happy you're with us. I'm hoping that you're much better health than when you first received that diagnosis.
Fortunately, yes. Thank you. Yeah, I also qualified that I'm doing well. But, the thing about that, Jed, is that, I as a physician always knew this, but, it's one thing to intellectually know something. It's another thing to really believe it, and internalize it and live it. I sort of never really appreciated the fragility of my own life. Mm-hmm. And so now when I say that I'm doing well, it's really just this moment. There's no kind of supposition that tomorrow I'll still be doing well. And so it's really a matter of trying to be as present as possible. So we're all sort of in this fragile balance, and it's sort of up to us to use it or not. And so I'm doing well in that regard.
Good. Yeah. I had a couple of years back, I had my own kind of come to Jesus moment to realize that life can change in a second. And I missed a step and blew out both of the quad tendons that I had been blessed with. And in that second, I went from being a guy who was running around and jumping up and down and doing my live shows to in a wheelchair for a few months and 18 months of PT. Certainly nothing as dramatic as a cancer diagnosis, but it for all of us, life is just life is really precious.
Right.
Yeah.
And your mobility is your livelihood. So I wouldn't discount it either. We each go through our own journey. We all have our own story. And there's no reason to discount the challenges that we face. Mm-hmm. Somebody's always got it better. Somebody's always got it worse. And so, but the reality is that if we don't kind of wake up to the gifts in our life, and we don't realize how fragile those gifts really are, then it's hard to really feel alive. And somehow embedded into the story I wanted to tell was something about those messages that it's really about here and now.
Yeah. And I think that's an especially hard concept for a young person to understand, because I'm 12, I'm 13, I'm 19. Yeah. Nothing's going to happen to me. It's, I'm a young person. But right. we do also know that the lives of young people can also change in the blink of an eye.
Definitely. And, one of the things that, two things. I didn't want to get too focused on the themes of the story. I wanted to just tell a story that people would enjoy. And actually, I'll qualify people in a second. But that was the first thing. Is I really didn't want to. Didn't want it to be about an idea. I wanted it to be a story where an idea kind of emerges from it. But ultimately, at the end of the day, it's a story. Right. The other piece of that is that I wanted it to be something that was really instructive about life. And one of the things that inspired me to write this story was there was a wonderful essay in the New York Times in I think it was September of 2023. It was a review of the Wild Robot series. The Wild Robot, I believe it was just the first book at that time, by Peter Brown. And I forget the exact title of it, and forgive me for that, but it was something to the effect of why children should read sad stories. And, I grew up in a way where death was not something that we talked about. In fact, I would say American society is very scared to talk about death, throughout the life course as well. And and particularly the way I grew up, it was almost like if you used the word death, it would happen. And it would happen right away. There was almost this superstition to it. And my son was born at a time when unfortunately one of my best friends was dying of leukemia, and it was this incredible and confusing transference of life, and I sort of decided at that time, being a physician who takes care of dying people all the time, having gone through that experience and seeing, bringing new life into the world, I really wanted to normalize the idea that death is a part of life. And so really the story was a story, but so much of the story was about, giving kids the credit that they deserve to be able to handle sort of the serious aspects of life, being able to have a very sort of normative conversation about the full life course, that, sometimes things happen where, we have setbacks, we have challenges, we lose people in the flesh. And how do we go on living ultimately? And I think that comes back to this idea of Viktor Frankl's message, was that, if we carry love with us, if we allow love to set as a seal upon our hearts, then we have the opportunity to almost be invincible from sort of what's happening all around us. And in that sense, that's the story I decided to write. I will quickly share one other thing before we move on. The audience that I decided to write for was actually just my two kids. We were kind of in a phase. I've always been a bit of a storyteller, and we were in a phase where we were every now and then we would put a little one of the kids' night lights on the floor of the bedroom, and we would say gather around, and we would sit around the nightlight like it was a campfire, and we would just make up a story. And the kids, I was always so surprised at how bad the stories were, yet how engrossed the kids were. And then I started thinking more about this. Well, like I could write a story that my two kids will like. And once I lowered that bar, because otherwise I was, Marcel Proust, I was sort of crinkling the paper and throwing against the wastebasket, and it was never good enough. And, I would never get past page one. But then when I lowered the bar and decided to write a story about these themes, for my two kids, then it just started to go much more easily. And ultimately, that's what I chose to do.
Yeah. You just made a flashback of a horrible memory of me decades ago, sitting down trying to write a 300-word essay and making a mistake and having to tear the paper out of the typewriter and throw it, and having a mountain of balls of paper around me.
It's a rite of passage for an author, I think, for sure.
So let's talk a little bit more about the story, who we're going to meet in the story.
Yeah. So actually, as it turns out, the two main characters of the story are my two kids. So there's an 11-year-old boy named Leo, and there's an 8-year-old girl named Laylee. And loosely, and by the way, the story is, I didn't try to disguise anything. The story was really a fictionalized version of my family, and our family story. And so, Leo and Laylee, are the main characters, and they're the ones driving the whole story. And at a very high level, the story is about a family whose father, Arian, gets diagnosed with a very serious disease, what is a terminal cancer, and the kids hatch this, frankly, foolish plan to run away and chase a lead for help that they think could help their father keep living, and then the story evolves from there.
Mm-hmm. Wow. Was this in some way therapy for you as you were writing this?
Definitely. I would say definitely. I mean, what writing isn't, though? I would argue that the very act of writing is therapy, but in this way, because the material was so directly lifted from my life. I mean, this is a fictional story, but
Mm-hmm.
there's clearly, I mean, the whole thing is really, I mean, one way to frame this is that I wrote a tribute that memorialized the love that I feel for my kids.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but ultimately generalize that to a fictionalized story that I hope that that many other people might enjoy to read and maybe get value from. But yeah, the whole process was really about um, as I think writing and speaking does. It was about partly about clarifying for myself how do I see my life? What is the legacy that I want to leave? How do I want my children to carry people forward with them? Relationships, really, not even necessarily people, relationships. And so yeah, there was a lot of kind of clarifying in my mind, spiritually and mentally, where do I stand on my own life?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Here on Reading with Your Kids, we're over 2,200 episodes right now, and we've talked a lot about grief and talking to our kids about grief through books.
Yeah.
So I'm thinking back, most of the books that we've celebrated here in the show that deal with grief have been picture books, so targeting a much younger audience.
Right.
I'm not sure, and I certainly don't remember all 2,200 episodes.
You're forgiven for that.
I don't know if we've had a middle grade novel that has dove. Let me get English back. That is, examined grief the same way I'm thinking A Seal Upon the Heart does. I'm wondering if, while we're more open to talk about it through picture books with our younger kids, maybe as it gets more real for middle grade kids who, I mean, when my kids were in that middle grade age group, they each lost a friend, a classmate. I'm wondering if we're getting better at talking about it with little kids, but not so much with our tweens and teens.
Yeah. One of the things that happens when kids get older is they start becoming more adult-like. And one of the things that I've observed is that we're relatively fearless when it comes to our own vulnerabilities with vulnerable children.
Mm-hmm.
But as children grow, they start demonstrating how capable they truly are and how powerful they are. And with power, there is the potential for vulnerability of ourselves as adults. And I think that changing audience that we're speaking to, adults to a slightly older child, I think we're a little bit more timid with how we speak to them, partly because we are seeing in them a much more capable person, which is a little bit counterintuitive to what you might expect. I think there's another piece of this. There's a book right now that's making great waves called The Anxious Generation, written by a really phenomenal psychologist, and there's another one written by him and a colleague called The Coddling of the American Mind. And I think that, I mean, the general premise is that with each generation, there's progress throughout human history, and it's almost a fact that every generation thinks the next generation is somehow soft, and that's probably true because of the problems of progress. This is a problem of progress, that as lives continue to get better, the bar kind of lowers a little bit for what we deem comfortable or safe. And I wonder if there's a little bit of the sort of older generation maybe not giving the younger generation enough credit, and maybe perhaps coddling. By the way, I will say coddling has a very pejorative sort of connotation to it, but really the point is that the younger generation is actually not doing it. It's actually the older generation that's doing the coddling. So if anybody's responsible, it's us, it's the adults, right? So I do wonder if we're just scared to have these conversations. And it goes back to part of the inspiration, which was that essay that I mentioned about Peter Brown's The Wild Robot.
Yeah. You know, I think you could be right. One of the reasons I launched the show 8 years ago was, I know that the relationship I have now with my now adult kids was built on a foundation of reading together, which led to cooking together and playing ball together and traveling and whatnot. But it was always those conversations that we had. And I always tell young parents, you know, who they have young kids and they're like, oh, what am I going to do? My kids are teenagers. I have to talk to them about sex and alcohol and drugs. And I tell them, don't wait until they're teenagers to talk about this stuff. Talk about it now. You're not going to sit down and talk to your kids about the dangers of drugs necessarily when they're 3, but you can talk about healthy choices and the consequences of the choices that you make. And I think when we do that, when our kids get to the age that, you know, we're talking about, those conversations, while still difficult, are going to be a lot easier, I think, because you've already built that relationship, and you both kind of practice with each other, being vulnerable, being open. And I think if we see our kids empowered at a younger and younger age, we won't be as intimidated when they get older, and we see that they are more powerful.
Totally agree. And I just to layer onto that, I would say one of the amazing things about stories, I mean, I love stories. I just love stories, because one of the amazing things about stories is they give us the opportunity to experience all of this life, even though we haven't accrued it ourselves individually, right? I mean, we have the ability to just tap into the collective experience just by engaging in a story, because we don't get to choose a lot of our experiences, but we do get to choose what stories we immerse ourselves in. And the other thing I'll just say about that, about what you just mentioned, was that, you know, life also hands us so many teaching opportunities that we kind of let slip through our fingers. In this case, you know, my kids bore witness to a father who was kind of processing his own mortality, what that meant for his family, what that meant for his own life. They had their own experience of that, and to not speak openly about it, or to not speak openly about the drug use that we see in the streets of San Francisco, or to not find an age appropriate, or developmentally appropriate, I should say, opportunity to really kind of help them understand and interpret that, is a wasted opportunity. It's sort of, it's almost letting our kids down. Us as adults, we kind of owe it to our kids. And I think one gap in in literature today is that we're so scared to give stories that don't have happy endings, that are challenging. I mean, I remember reading my story to my kids, and they were really shaken up at times, and I sort of thought, good, you know, that means you're feeling something, and that means we're going to have an opportunity to grow from this. Yeah.
Right. Yeah, I agree with you. One of the guests that we've had here on the show is Father Greg Boyle, who, fellow Californian down in Los Angeles, created Homeboy Industries, the largest gang intervention program in the world. In his books, he came on to celebrate Barking to the Choir, which is a follow-up to Tattoos on the Heart, where he tells the stories of the gang members that he's met over the years. And there's lots of really funny moments, and there's lots of tragedy. Tragic moments where somebody is just getting their life together and then they lose it in the blink of an eye. And I brought Father Greg on because, you know, while he didn't write the books for kids, I definitely saw it as a book that I would have gladly read with my son and my daughter when they were in middle school, in high school, and starting to have those conversations, and letting them feel the same emotions that I felt as I was reading those stories.
Right. And, you know, I mentioned one of my best friends died of leukemia. One of the things that he said shortly before he died was that, you know, my death is not a tragedy. You know, and he really believed that, because death is really not a tragedy. Death is an expected thing. I mean, there was once a palliative care physician and I actually referenced this in my story, that put up a graph. It was just a horizontal straight line, and the x-axis was time, and the y-axis was human mortality rate. And of course, it was just a flat line at 100%, because every human that has ever lived has died, right? And until we just sort of embrace that that's just a natural part of the human condition, then it stops being tragic and it starts becoming much more expected and a lot less loaded. And then we can start having a less sort of irrational conversation about it. And we can actually, be present with our lives in this moment and not be so afraid of the pain that inevitably will come and choose to suffer for it. Or we may not, sort of have this attachment to kind of, or be chasing more and more pleasure and always be on a treadmill. I think it just allows us to be present. And so I would just say that telling a story that is able to encompass the entire gamut of the life experience is sort of value neutral. And the second it becomes value neutral, then I think it becomes much more interesting, because then we're really tapping into something that is even more truthful than, death is a tragedy sort of thing. Now, there's no question that loss hurts. I mean, we miss people. We miss their touch. We miss, the senses that we have, are so powerfully shaping our experience. But we should just be grateful that we have those senses for the time that we have them. And we can write stories that are all about how those senses have delivered us this beautiful story and this arc and the transformation that happens through a character's arc.
Yeah. I'm curious, what did your kids think about being the star of this story and having their lives kind of broadcast to the world?
Yeah. So I'll say I've thought a little bit more about the latter than probably they have, but in terms of their impression, they were just ecstatic. One, I'll say the genesis of this was, it was never written. I'm not an author. It was never written for a wider audience. The audience was two kids, my two kids, to tell them a story. That, sort of a bedtime story that they would enjoy. And they were just like, they just loved seeing, looking in this sort of two-way mirror, because I was behind the mirror, and I was sort of sending out the light that was ultimately coming into their eyes. And it was almost like this lens that they were seeing themselves through me. And for them, that was incredibly just insightful and exciting, truly exciting for them, because they don't see the characters as characters. They see themselves in those characters. Now, everybody else will see characters, but these two, they see themselves. And so, when one of the kids does something special in the story, they puff up their chest and they kind of glow to the other one. And of course, the other one gets them back in the next chapter or whatever. And they really enjoyed that. I did have, some, I had to think hard about whether I wanted to, keep so realistic. I decided ultimately that this is a fictional memoir. I don't know if you've ever read Dave Eggers's a staggering work of a heartbreaking work of staggering genius. And basically, it's a beautifully told. I mean, sort of in another stratosphere compared to my story, but beautifully told. But ultimately, it's a very embellished memoir about his family. And I kind of imagined that ultimately the product that I was creating was something in that ballpark of, sort of Dave Eggers's fictional memoir meeting something more like Tuck Everlasting, which is about sort of finding the fountain of youth and such. But yeah, the kids loved it. I ultimately decided it was the right thing to do, because this was the story that I chose to tell. And ultimately, fiction can be whatever whatever the author decides it to be. And Philip Pullman, who wrote His Dark Materials, once said something about believing in the democracy of reading. And ultimately, I do too, that it's for the audience to decide whether it's about me and my kids or if it's about a character who happens to have my name and my kids' names, and, let them judge it for themselves.
Yeah. Now that this book is out in the world and people are going to be consuming it, and hopefully families will be sitting down and either reading it together or co-reading and coming together to talk about it at dinner time or on the way to soccer or ballet, will there be a second book coming from you?
Really good question. Yeah, I think so. I've thought a lot about what that will look like. And, the story is, and I won't spoil the sort of the way it evolves, but the story is really fundamentally about my kids, Leo and Laylee, choosing to make a very bold decision and run away and seek help for their dying father. Mm-hmm. The two ideas that I've been toying with are both a prequel and a sequel. And by the way, one thing that we haven't covered in this story is that one of the things that helps them kind of keep pulling at the thread is that they start coming into this power that they've not ever appreciated before, they've not experienced before. They call it imagination. Basically, it's this idea that they can start feeling the feelings of others. They can start tapping into the collective subconscious of humanity, and they're able to do things that are really, really incredible. Mm-hmm. And they're able to have these sensations of other people's thoughts and feelings, and it's like this unlimited deep empathy. And I thought, well, how do I play with that in a sequel? What does that look like years down the line? Or what is if we rewind the clock before all of this happened, when they were just a normal family, in quotes? What did that look like? Maybe it was just story time around the campfire, on the bedroom floor kind of thing.
Neat. Yeah.
Where
can we go to find out more about A Seal Upon the Heart and find out more about you?
Yeah, thank you. So I've just launched a website, so arianhetefy.com. And of course, the novel will be available on all of the major outlets, both in a hardcover version as well as an electronic version, an ebook. And so, Amazon, Barnes & Noble, as examples. But to find out more, sign up for my listserv, arianhetefy.com.
We've had a great time speaking in a really powerful conversation with the author of A Seal Upon the Heart. Our guest has been Dr. Arian Hefty. Hey, Dr. Arian, thanks so much for being on Reading with Your Kids.
Jed, thank you so much for having me.
Hey, my friends, one of my favorite parts of the day is story time. There's just something magical about snuggling up with your kids, opening a great book, and escaping into an adventure together. And let me tell you, that moment becomes even more magical when you're curled up in the softest, coziest bedding you've ever felt. That's why I'm so excited that CozyEarth.com is supporting Reading with Your Kids. Their bamboo sheets, comforters, and pajamas are unbelievably soft, naturally breathable, and temperature regulating, which means no more sweaty nights or chilly toes. Right now, Cozy Earth is offering Reading with Your Kids listeners an unbelievable and exclusive 41% off their entire site. That's right, you heard me right, 41% off. So go ahead, create your own cozy reading nook, wrap yourself and your kids up in something comfy, grab your favorite bedtime book, and turn story time into the best part of your day. Head on over to CozyEarth.com and use the promo code READ at checkout to save 41%. That's CozyEarth.com, promo code READ. Hey, real quick, we want to let you know that this episode of Reading with Your Kids is brought to you by Zivo Life. ZIVO.life. Zivo Life. Hey, parents, caregivers, and book lovers, ever wish you had a little bit more zip in your step when you're reading The Very Hungry Caterpillar for the 5th or the 50th time today? Say hello to Zivo Life, your new best friend in daily wellness. Zevo Life is the world's most nutrient-dense whole plant loaded with 50% plant protein, essential amino acids, fiber, antioxidants, and so much more. It's a powerhouse in just 1 teaspoon a day, and yes, it's giving people more energy, better gut health, and even healthier skin and hair. If you want to feel more energized, focused, and vibrant during your next animated storytime performance, Zevo Life might just be your secret weapon. Visit Zevo.life, Z-I-V-O.life, and use the promo code READ to get 30% off your order. It comes with a 30-day risk-free guarantee, and you've got nothing to lose except your sluggishness. Go now to Zevo.life and use the promo code READ and save 30%. We are going to have a great time today. We are speaking to the author and the illustrator of Zoe's Day with Dr. J. Please first welcome to the show the author, Dr. Letishia Jefferson. Dr. J, how are you?
I'm doing great. Thanks for having us.
You are welcome. And also joining us from Georgia, Bonnie Bright, the illustrator. Hey, Bonnie.
Hey.
Happy to both to have you here. Dr. J, what was the inspiration for you to write this book?
Yeah, it came from 2 different places. One, being a pediatrician for almost 10 years, I really see a lot of anxiety about kids coming into the office and just nervous about the unexpected. So I was motivated by creating something that parents could utilize to help prep their kids before bringing them into the office. And then the other big motivation was actually my daughter, Zoe. So when I became a mom, I was reading lots of stories, lots of books, and it really reignited my passion for children's literature. I've always kind of had a dream of writing a book. And I was able to kind of marry both of those loves and create Zoe's Day with Dr. J with Bonnie here. So it was great.
Well, you know, Dr. J, my kids are now 29 and 32, but I do have very vivid memories of my daughter, taking my daughter to the pediatrician and her going, I don't want to get a shot today, and me having to say, I really don't know if we have a choice there, kiddo. But it was a lot better than lying to her or, saying, oh, no, you don't have to worry about anything. Nothing uncomfortable is going to happen.
Absolutely. Yes, I really encourage parents something to do is call the doctor's office when you're making the appointment. Ask them, are there going to be any lab tests or vaccines during this appointment? That way you can use that time beforehand to prep your kids. And in the book, we have it's kind of subtle, but there's like a deep breathing technique that she does to kind of take away any angst when she's getting the shot. You can also do things depending on your child's interest, like bringing a stuffy or a lovey or something to distract them. So if the parents are prepared for what to expect, that also helps prepare the children too. So
yeah. And it helps. I remember speaking about preparing the parents, I remember taking my son, who was my firstborn, in for a vaccine, and he was getting a polio vaccine, the live one that you get on the tongue. And I guess I made the mistake of reading the warnings afterwards. And I remember playing with my son and saying, if your kid takes a live vaccine, don't let him drool on you. And of course, that's all my son did that night, was drool on me. And I was terrified.
Yeah. It could definitely be a lot, but hopefully your provider kind of, like you said, preps you for that and has you prepared so you both know what to expect. So that's great.
Bonnie, speaking of knowing what to expect, what was your reaction when Dr. J reached out and shared the manuscript with you?
Oh, it was all positive. First of all, meeting Letishia was just the best thing ever. She's super positive, really intelligent, and her book follows suit. And I just couldn't wait to illustrate it. She inspired me, and I just tried to take everything she described and everything she wrote and put all of those feelings into what I created.
Yeah. Was there one, Dr. J mentioned that there's a deep breathing technique. Were there anything that you found challenging to illustrate?
Actually, in that scene, I believe we have Dad helping with that shot scene. And so the comfort of a parent was what we decided to go with. We always discussed what the illustration could be, and I would come up with sketches with ideas and then get the final product.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Now, Bonnie, one of the things that I learned doing this podcast for 8 years now, and something that really surprised me was traditionally published books, authors and illustrators have little to no contact with each other.
Correct.
It sounds like Dr. J was very involved in the process of creating these illustrations. Was that something that you found challenging, or did you enjoy that part of it?
No, not at all. In fact, that's what I specialize in. So always the author is my editor, and I've always run every illustration past the author, and it usually becomes a lifelong friendship. The relationships I form, I will always cherish. So it's never been a negative experience for me, and it only spurs my creativity. And that's probably the uniqueness of every author, is probably the reason why every book I illustrate looks a little bit different than the last, because each author is unique.
Yeah. So, Dr. J, writing children's books is a lot different than curing mumps and measles and things like that. Is this something that you always wanted to do, or was it just something, I need to create something that's going to help my patients and their parents?
Yeah, great question. Once you look back over your life, you kind of see little seeds were kind of planted. And as a child, I used to write stories. I used to write poems. I kind of put that to the side. I'm more of a science and math girly, and English was never my strong suit. So I more so migrated towards the sciences, but I've always loved reading. I've always loved writing little poems, especially. And so I think that was always kind of in my heart. And as I kind of got more, especially when I had my daughter and I just was reading to her all the time, I really became inspired. I was like, I can do this. I can write a book. And then I wanted to find something that was also meaningful and not just, another children's book. And I felt like I could use my unique pediatrician perspective to make something that could be meaningful to my family. And the language is written in a rhyming, very simplistic way so that it can encourage those young readers to pick up the book and read it themselves. My niece, who's 5 years old, Aria, she picked up the book and was able to read most of it herself. And that's what I want to do. I want to encourage those early literacy skills and those early readers. So that's really, those were my biggest inspirations. And that really kind of what made me produce this
awesome.
Project, so.
Hey, Dr. J, I started the Reading with Your Kids podcast because I know the relationship I have with my now adult kids was built on a foundation of reading, and that's what I wanted to share with other parents out there. But I know that there's so many more benefits. So could you talk, I'm just a dopey podcaster here. People, they listen to me, but, when I tell them, there's all these great benefits from reading with your kids, they might not listen to me. But you're a doctor. You're one of the big cheeses out there. People might listen. So what are some of the benefits, other than just learning how to read themselves, do kids get from reading?
I think fundamentally you get the bonding experience, just being close to your child and bonding in those early years. Those formative years is so important. Those formative years between 2 and 5, the brain is growing faster than it is at any other point in your life. So all of those words, those colors, everything that you're describing are depositing in your children and going to help them have future success academically. If you pick specific books that kind of can help with emotional regulation, you can kind of help plant those seeds so they start their academic career off strong, and you'll see those seeds blossom through high school, college, and beyond. So, literacy skills are there, emotional development, learning to share, imagination. Some people think that you have to sit there and read the whole book, and you really don't. Depending on the age, it's a matter of reading a couple of pages or pointing out the colors or counting the pictures on the page. Mm-hmm. All of those things help to enhance your children's development depending on what stage they are. So it doesn't have to be like a daunting task, like, we have to sit down and read for 15 minutes. You really don't. Let your child pick the book, actually see what they're interested in. And if they're interested and want to sit there and read from front to back, then you can do that. If they want to read a page or they just want to point out animal sounds, all of those things are important in development. So you really can't go wrong with introducing these books early.
Yeah. Bonnie, did you always dream of creating children's books?
Actually, I did. We were similar in that way. I used to create little tiny children's books when I was in elementary school that you could barely see the pages, but they were completely intact with tiny, tiny text. And I wrote books starting from that age on. They weren't very good. I have some of them still, but it was the dream, and I did study illustration in college. So
that's wonderful.
Yeah.
One of the things we encourage families to do is to take picture walks through books and just imagine what do you think this story is all about. So even going so far as to cover the words, so we just look at the pictures. What Bonnie, what kind of things do you think kids will notice if they're taking a picture walk through Zoe's Day with Dr. J?
Well, I hope that we included enough things to explore. For instance, I think it's the opening page when she's waking up for her day. We have a little stuffed animal in a similar pose, mimicking the arms stretched up wide. And we have sunflowers out the window and the sun coming up. So you could hopefully sit there and point out all the little things in the image. I did give the illustration that probably represents the book the most, where Dr. J is in the room receiving the little drawing Zoe made for her. I gave a printed card of that actually this morning to a little girl waiting at the doctor's office with her mom. And she sat there for 15 minutes just looking at that one image, pointing things out to her mom. So she was talking about what was in the drawing and pointing out the eyes and the stethoscope and the different things in that illustration.
Oh,
so
wonderful.
That's what we hope for.
Yeah. There's also an I Spy little venture in the back of the book where Bonnie has illustrated all of the tools that you expect to see in the doctor's office. So the idea of the parents take the book in the office with them, the parents can, and the kids can look for the actual instruments and kind of find them in the book. So that's something else to keep them entertained and busy in the office too.
Awesome. Hey, Dr. J, I have to ask this. Is it okay to kind of play with the instruments when you go into a doctor's office? Not that I ever have done anything like that.
Yeah, I think it's best, wait for your provider to come in. And then, we love to kind of engage in that way. Like, can I listen to my heartbeat? Things like that. Yes. Now, some of them, depending on like the otoscope, can be kind of heavy. And so you may want to wait because we would hate for them to drop or hurt themselves. But no, I want you to explore. I want you to try to get your, test your reflexes out. And that's how they learn. And that's how they're engaged. That's something else in the book I really want to encourage is for kids to advocate for themselves and to be a part of the visit. So I want them to come in with questions and I want them to explore the instruments. So it's not like we're talking about them. I want them to be involved in the visit. And I hope that Zoe illustrates that as well in the book with all of her curiosity and questions.
I think that's a really important point. I think there's so many, not only kids, but there's so many adults that are intimidated by, the doctor and that image of, the doctor is this all-knowing being and you can't question. I think it's very healthy to be able to ask questions of your physician.
Absolutely. It's collaborative care. We want to hear your input, your questions, because that can help guide our treatment and help us make the right diagnosis and the best treatment plan for you. Because medicine's not a one-shoe-fits-all kind of thing. So.
Well, that I think is an important thing too, to help kids understand from a very early age that, what works for me may not work best for somebody else with the same kind of issue.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Bonnie, was there anything that, do you have a favorite illustration? You were talking about that one that you shared. Is there any other favorite illustration from the book, or an illustration that you weren't able to include in the book just for lack of space?
Actually, no. I think we wound up including pretty much everything in the book. I have the original painting here before editing it, including the background of my favorite. So this is the original acrylic. So most of the book is painted in acrylic and then taken into Photoshop and altered there for the final. And that's probably my favorite illustration, though, is her waking up in the morning with her hair and just so super, super fun and excited for her day.
Yeah. I have to ask Dr. J, what does Zoe think about being the star of this book?
You know, she's only 2, so she doesn't know what's going on, but it's kind of funny because I show her the book and I'll say, "Who's that?" And she'll say, "Zoe." And I say, "Who's that?" And she'll say, "Mama." So, so it's kind of fun in that way, but I don't think that she understands the full grasp, but hopefully she will one day.
Yeah.
Cause I want her to see herself in the book. I want all kids to look at the book and say, "Oh, that's me." Like I was scared, but I'm not scared because Zoe in the book is not scared. And so I hope she can model that behavior for everyone.
Yeah, yeah. You know, we love the fact that books can be mirrors, windows, and sliding glass doors. And Zoe's Day with Dr. J is a great way for kids of color to see themselves portrayed positively on the pages of a book.
Absolutely. And there's some subtle things that I don't know if everyone realizes, but we did it intentionally. Like on the cover of the book, you can see that Dr. J is wearing purple scrubs and Zoe's wearing a purple shirt. And that's intentional because I wanted Zoe to realize, hey, that can be me. I can see myself in Dr. J. When she's getting ready for the doctor's appointment, she actually puts on a white coat. And I have kids that come in my office and I love it when they dress up and they come in their scrubs and their white coats and they're like, "Hey, I'm just like a doctor, just like you." I love it. And that just helps like them visualize, because if you see it, then you can be it. So, we did little like hints of that throughout the book, which is great too.
You know, one of the things I want to ask you is I just finished interviewing a scientist from the United Kingdom, and one of her passions is to encourage kids, but especially girls, to explore the STEM fields. And I know things are getting a little bit better, but even my niece, who is studying biomedical engineering, is probably only one of 2 women in the program at her university.
Wow.
Is it easier for women to get into the medical fields than the other STEM fields?
I don't know about easier. We're still, we've come a long way, but there's still a long way to go. You know, we still make up a very small percentage of the overall, population of medicine. Now, in pediatrics, it's a little bit heavier on the female representation, but in general, it's still a ways we need to go. That's also a passion point for mine too. I'm involved in a nonprofit organization in Jacksonville called Sciences, and that's what we do. We do different initiatives and programs to kind of introduce children, especially girls, K through 5, to different activities within the STEM community. Because again, if you don't even know it exists, and there's science everywhere. There's science. We went to the Coca-Cola plant. There's science there. There's science at the coffee shop, everywhere. So, it's just exposure. And I think the more that kids kind of see, oh, I can be a biomedical engineer and do this. I can be, I can do this and, work at Toyota and be an engineer there, the more that they see it, the more that they know that it's a realistic possibility for them. So.
Yeah. And Bonnie, there's even science in the arts field. And you were mentioning how the paintings originally were done in acrylic, but you take them into Photoshop. Did you ever imagine when you were just that young girl creating those little books that one day you'd have this amazing technology that could enhance your art?
No, I sure didn't. Actually, even in college, we didn't even use computers. I'm dating myself quite a bit, but it's probably obvious. My actual first career in computer games was in 1990. And we created educational computer game backgrounds in 320 by 200 resolution with the big chunky pixels. Oh. So I have been there from the start, from then till now, and seen it evolve, and it's pretty amazing. Yeah. Until AI, but we'll see what happens next. But yeah, it's pretty incredible what we've been able to do.
Yeah. Well, Dr. J, I guess the last question I have is, do you intend on creating a series?
I am open to wherever this journey leads me. I'm so focused on this book right now. I haven't thought about the next one, but I could definitely see Zoe having lots of more adventures in the medical community and beyond. We also, Bonnie and I created an accompanied activity book. It's an activity and coloring book that goes along with the storybook so that kids can do puzzles and color and actively kind of reinforce the different things that we try to talk about in the story. So we have them coming out together. So hopefully that'll keep people busy for a while as I plan the next move.
Awesome. Well, we should tell everybody where they can go to find out more about Zoe's Day with Dr. J and find out more about each of you. So, Dr. J, first off, do you have a website folks can check out?
I do. Definitely come check me out at www.learnplaywithdrj.com. And you can also look at my Instagram at learnandplay.drj with Dr. J. And that's where you'll get the most up-to-date information regarding the releases. My pre-sale is happening now, so you can go to the website and get both books along with pre-sale for our Stuffy that's coming that Bonnie also helped to create.
Oh, neat.
So all of that information you can get on the website, which is www.learnplaywithdrj.com.
Awesome. And Bonnie, do you have a website folks can check out?
I do. It's called brightillustrations.com. So BRIGHT, like my last name, illustrations.com.
We've had a wonderful time speaking to the author and illustrator of Zoe's Day with Dr. J. Our guests have been Dr. Letishia Jefferson and Bonnie Bright. My friends, thanks so much for being on Reading with Your Kids.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We hope you've enjoyed this episode of Reading with Your Kids and will join us for the next exciting episode of the show. I want to thank the folks who made today's show so wonderful, starting with our guest, Dr. Arian Hefty. Please be sure to check out A Seal Upon the Heart. And Dr. Letishia Jefferson. Please be sure to check out Zoe's Day with Dr. J. I want to thank our sponsors, BigForkBrands.com, CozyEarth.com, and Zevo.life. Please use the promo code READ to save big at those great sites. You know, we're grateful to our sponsors for supporting the show. Just so you know, when you use our promo code, we may earn a small commission at no extra cost to you. It's a win-win. I want to thank my team, Fatima Khan, Chris Doherty, Elle Glassman, Dante Greco. I want to thank my beautiful wife for all the support she gives me. Most of all, we all want to thank you. Please remember, reading together is a real magic that connects us one story at a time. I'll be looking for you in the next episode of Reading with Your Kids.